Did you know that there is a course called Women Who Lead where you get to spend hours with me learning how to make every interaction safe, logical, fun, and memorable? Doesn't that sound like a great way to spend some time? It will put tools in your tool belt that will change your trajectory. Give it a shot. Go to www.aimwithus.com and click on courses. I can't wait to see you there.
Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christie, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. It is another great day to have a great day, and we have an amazing guest with us today. And so Jamie and I are going to have a lot of fun, but before we start, I need you to follow this podcast. If you're not already following, you won't know when really amazing guests like Jamie are here, and that makes me sad. So please go ahead and follow. It doesn't matter on what platform, and share it with your friends so that we can spread a little more productive joy, because I think we all need it for sure. So today we are in for a treat. We have Jamie Lerner with us. Jamie Lerner is lots of things, but she started by saying she's an equestrian. She likes to ride and jump horses and ponies, which is very exciting, and she's done so most of her adult life. She's also a nana, different from just a grandma, because that's boring, right? And so she gets to be a grandmother, and she believes in harmonious connection. And today she's going to bring some of that to us at Productive Joy. So Jamie, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. But before we jump all the way in, people are interesting. And so they decide in the first 30 seconds or so if this is an episode they really want to listen to. So, what would you say to us to convince us that this one can't be missed?
You're your own greatest resource. Trust yourself.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so if I'm my own greatest resource, that means that maybe I already have all the things that I need to be successful. Do you help people figure that out?
I assist people in assisting themselves to reconnect with their inner being, inner knowing.
So that reconnection, because we've all been connected at some point, right? But I think we lose sight of it.
Absolutely. Yes, we do. But it's easy to get back there. And when we do, it feels like coming home.
Well, and that makes good sense because we're actually only able to be ourselves, but so often we spend much of our lives trying to be somebody else, don't we?
Yes. And I'm not even sure that we're aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And or if we are, we're like, oh, whoops, I didn't do that on purpose for sure. Okay. So let's back way up, Jamie, because you did not start in this space. You got to this space. So why don't you tell us a little bit about little Jamie, or maybe teenager Jamie, or maybe young adult Jamie, or now that kind of got you to this point where you were helping people reconnect with themselves. So tell us your story.
Okay. So I was born with a knowing, and we all are. And I was very connected to myself from my earliest memory, very young, but I did not have a emotional connection with my mom.
Mm.
So that was confusing for me. I didn't quite understand how I could be so connected to me, but not have the connection with the person that brought me into this world. So I spent a long time trying to figure that out. But what I realized was that it's not possible to have a connection with someone that isn't connected to themselves.
Mm.
So this has always been intriguing to me. And I think it's a really important message to pass on to people, because I think ultimately the value of our life at the end is the quality of our connections with others. But that can only happen if we have an emotional connection with ourselves.
Wow. Okay. So at a young age, you figured out that your mother was not connected to herself. She couldn't,
No,
or
no.
you figured that out at a later date.
So I only could figure out at the beginning that she wasn't connected to me.
Okay.
It was only at the end, and it was actually at the end of her life when I was an adult and sitting with her in the ICU, and she was intubated, and I felt all the love poured through her to me. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is the beginning of our mother and daughter relationship.
Mm.
And then she transitioned. So it really was interesting because I felt like there was so much closure and so much awareness of how she had sidestepped the connection with herself because she was an amazing force of nature.
Mm.
But that connection was never really there between her and her.
Between her and her. I find that to be so interesting for a lot of different reasons that I'll get into in a second. But before I do, you said she was a force of nature.
Totally.
Say more about that. So, what kind of person was your mother?
I had amazing parents. So when I was growing up, they were very allowing. They allowed all five of us to kind of find our way, to know ourselves, to love ourselves, to guide ourselves. It might have all been unconsciously, but they were also, both of them, very progressive and involved in so many interesting things and people and experiences. So our house was like a revolving door of people from all over the world, and they were always hosting just amazing events. So she was on every board. She went back to school and got her law degree after she was a teacher. She practiced criminal law with my father till a year before she died. She was amazing. Yeah.
Wow. So she just did all the things. Well, the reason that this hits home to me is my father's 87, and this year has had a rather tumultuous health journey that he was diagnosed with colon cancer, and he lives up in Delaware and I live in Florida, and his wife had open heart surgery 2 days before he found out that he had cancer. And so she wasn't able to care for him, which meant I was supposed to. So I went up to pick him up and bring him to Florida. And the day that I got up there to pick him up, he fell and broke his hip, which meant that I couldn't bring him to Florida. And so I have been having to take care of him from afar. Now, my father is a lifelong entertainer, like that was his profession. He played Dixieland music his whole life. He had the longest running comedy show in Vegas, right? Like when you said force of nature, that is what I hear when I hear my father. He's definitely a force of nature. And that same connection that you're mentioning, I have always struggled with because he was bigger than life, but not always deep, if that makes sense, right? It had to look good. It didn't have to be good. It was surface. And now here we are in the ends of his life, however many years he has left. And I'm realizing that there is a lot more to him because he's allowing himself to become connected. And I think that's the connection that I hear with what you're saying is when that force of nature is ready, there can be that connection with self. I don't think that he ever took the time to say, who am I? So that he could be connected with his children. Does that make sense? Does
It
that
makes perfect sense. And it's interesting because sometimes that moment is when we transition because there's no resistance.
Mm.
Other times it's when we're very ill and we realize that we need to sit with ourselves and embrace ourselves. So I think whenever it can happen, it's a beautiful thing. And sometimes it just doesn't even happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I'm seeing is that it's happening for him in this stage, and it is a beautiful thing. And to get to be there and be a part of it is pretty great. And you have to let go of some of your own, I don't know, bitterness, frustration, whatever, because, I'm 48, and for those 48 years, we could have been doing this. Right? And so, how do you help people recognize that there's some things that we have to let go of in order to be connected to?
I think when we're able to understand what's happening, we can do a beautiful reframe. So for me, it was like I was so appreciative of my mom for allowing me to know myself and to love myself and to guide myself and to always be connected to myself. And even though that wasn't something she was consciously aware of, it's my superpower. So
Hmm.
I am eternally grateful to her. And I feel that we choose our parents from the heavens above. And it was an amazing choice for me. So I think we find a lot of gratitude when there's actual understanding of what the situation was really like. And I think it's easier to do that as an adult than it is to do that as a child.
Well, because as an adult, we've had experiences of our own, right? And we've walked in our own shoes for a while and we're a little more comfortable in our own space. I think about so my kids are 24, I have twins, and my 24 version of myself and my 48 version of myself are really, really different. And I say to them often, I've never been 48 before. You've never been 24 before. We're figuring this out for the first time together. But the older I get, the more I'm really able to pull on some of those previous experiences and get really great things out of it. So you've written a book about this kind of thing, right? So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So the book is The Ever Loving Essence of You. And actually, I wrote it like 15 years ago, a few months after my mom transitioned. And I wrote it with a friend of mine who knew my family, and we grew up together. And we sat down and literally wrote it in a weekend. It just kind of flowed through me. And I think that once again, that was such a beautiful tribute to my mom and a way to really thank her for allowing me to just, yeah, understand so much more about connection.
Yeah. And so who would want to read this book? Like who's your target audience as people are listening right now? Who needs this in their life?
Well, I don't think anyone needs it, but I think it's a lovely option. And it's really a loving book about how we can recreate the relationship with ourselves and then go on to create relationships with other people. So, the nice thing about the book is you can open it at any page and there's little tips and tricks and there's nothing, no psychobabble, and it's really easy to embrace. So, it's very old, and yet it's a timeless little gem.
Well, and that's a beautiful thing. I love a book that I can pick up wherever and find something that is in it for me right then. And I think it's pretty great that you didn't hold all of that in once you realized what you had learned from your mother, from life, from what you had experienced, and then you decided to give that back, which is pretty beautiful.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So I have to ask you my favorite question because I think it's going to have a really interesting answer. And that's if you had to describe productive joy, how would you describe it?
Well, I think if we can get into alignment with what we're doing and feel the joy first, and that to be the goal, not to be productive, but to experience the joy.
Mm,
And I was thinking about teachers that, because I know you
yeah.
were an teacher.
I will always be an educator. You can't help yourself.
Okay. Well, some of my favorite and memorable teachers were teachers that were so passionate about what they were teaching. And there was something so human and dynamic about them. And so I think those were people and teachers that really were joyful about what they were teaching and joyful about the people that they were teaching.
Mm,
So I think if we can't find the joy first, I think productivity gets lost because
mhm,
there's so much resistance.
mhm.
And when we're in joy, there's no resistance.
Uh,
So
yeah, when we're in joy, there's no resistance. I think that's a pretty profound statement.
how it just becomes the natural extension of who we are and where we are and how we're wanting to share that.
Yeah. I love that. And as an educator, yes, so 100% correct. 25 years of being an educator in every space, right? So I set out to be a teacher, period, right? Like that's what I was going to do. And then several years into my career, I got the opportunity to leave the classroom and start teaching teachers, which I didn't know was a thing, but it is. And I then transitioned into teaching adults. And what I discovered is that you have to first of all have a gift for that. That is not for everyone. But when you've been gifted with the ability to teach adults, you see them for who they are instead of just assuming that they all think like you, act like you, whatever. And so, going back to what you said about your best teachers being those passionate people who are human and dynamic first. I think that's a lesson we all need to take away from what you're saying, because here's the reality. Every one of us is an educator all day long. You're teaching people about connectedness, and I'm teaching people about productive joy, and my husband's teaching people about mortgages and appraisals. And right, we are all educators. And yet, some of us have had zero training in what it looks like to get somebody to remember what you said. And so there's an art to it, and that art does involve passion. If we're not passionate about our art, what are we doing? So I think that's a beautiful connection. I really appreciate that definition, and I'm sure that you are creating it in others.
Thank you. Joy is contagious.
Yes, it is. Something that I choose to spread all the time. That is most definitely something that I am trying to do for sure. So, if somebody wanted to find you, Jamie, what would be the best way for them to do so?
I have a website. It's www.jamie-lerner.com.
And what would I find if I went there? Which I kind of
You
did
would
as I read
find
you.
a really wonderful website that is filled with so many interesting things, including all the podcasts, lots of information that's free, ways to get in touch with me, where the book can be found, which is Amazon. And it's a really nice space to land And if people are not comfortable there, then they know immediately that they do not want to work with me. So that's helpful, I think, for people to right away know that's a yes or I got to find someone else.
Well, and there's power in that for sure. And so you work with individuals and coach them on reconnecting with themselves, getting them to the point where they see themselves for who they are and go from there. Is that accurate or tell me more?
I assist people in assisting themselves to get from where they are to where they want to be and reminding them that they have all the power to do just that. And I'm a very small part of it.
Mm.
So it's a very empowering and fun process filled with a lot of laughter.
Ooh, and laughter is the best medicine as far as I'm
Yes.
concerned. Our brains only fire neurons when there's some sort of emotion tied to what we're doing. So you have to evoke a little emotion or people will forget everything you said. So I think you're doing the right thing.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Jamie, I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you a little bit, and I would love to ask you some rapid fire questions to get to know you just a little bit more. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. What is your definition of fun?
Anything that feels good.
Okay. Does that include horses?
Absolutely. And my motto is if I'm not having fun, I'm done.
Oh, I like it. You know what? That's a good motto to have. Okay. How do you know that you are showing up as your authentic self?
I am very comfortable in my skin. So I find that when I'm comfortable in my skin, which is always, that it's very disarming to people.
Mm,
And it's a nice place to be, even if you aren't saying a word. So your presence becomes such a gift to others,
I
which
love
is
that.
nice.
I love that. All right. How do you channel your best self on your worst days?
I laugh a lot. And I laugh a lot with myself, at myself, and I give myself a lot of grace.
Grace. That is the name of the game, right? That is certainly
Yeah.
something I'm learning. The more we are thoughtful about that, the better. All right. So I have one additional question to ask you before I ask my final question. And that's if you had to give a piece of advice to the leaders who are listening to this. So our audience is really people who want to create more productive joy in their lives, whether that's personally or professionally. They're often leading others and they're wanting to create that space where people are both joyful, like you said, first, leading with joy and productive. What piece of advice would you give them? Like, what would you say? Here's the thing. If you did this thing, magic would happen.
It's two things. Don't take yourself so seriously, because I think we do, and it doesn't serve us or others. And you're only responsible for the delivery. You are not responsible for how your information is received.
Hmm. That's really profound. As someone who speaks to people for a living, I think that that's really profound. I can only control my controllables, right? I can only influence
Yes,
others. I cannot control them. So I love that. So I'm responsible for the delivery and they're responsible for the acceptance.
yes, because we can only hear people from where we are with ourselves in that moment.
So true. So true. So,
Yeah.
speaking of that, if you had to leave everyone with one major thought, because people really can only hold on to one major idea when they hear great things like this, what's the number one thing you really want people to walk away with today, Jamie?
You are your own greatest resource. Trust yourself.
Hmm. Well, so it's simple yet not easy, right? And I think that is so powerful. Thank you so much for being willing to share your brilliance on productive joy. I know everybody got a little nugget of wisdom that they could take with them. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And friends, again, I'm telling you every single time, these fabulous humans have something to say that we can take with us right away. So I don't know what your takeaway is today, but I do know that there were several you could latch on to. And the number one being that we are our greatest resource. So don't sell yourself short. Figure out a way to use all of that brilliant talent so that you can be the best version of yourself. And as always, I want you to figure out a way to turn fun into action.